Welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we embrace open dialogue from different perspectives about entrepreneurship, relationships, and education.
And this open dialogue is needed, especially today, as we live in a Twitter finger society where everyone seems to care more about getting their point across than they are about hearing the other person's perspective.
If you're ready to grow your business, your relationships, and your personal development, stick with us here at the Perspective Podcast, because sometimes in life, to get to the next level, you just need a different perspective.
If I look like what I've been through, I'd be roadkill. Tell me off of the pavement, I'm reeking from the...
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Perspective Podcast. I'm C. Muzan. Got T here with me. Say what's up, T.
What's going on, family?
Guys, we are back. Hopefully everyone's doing well. By the time you're hearing this, probably going to be close to the holidays for you. So hopefully everyone's having a great time with family or getting a chance to see their loved ones and be around and be grateful and thankful for the things that God has provided you. But we're happy to be back here for another week to share some more perspective. What
y'all doing for the holidays, Chris?
Nothing special. Just staying with family, bringing mom and grandma over, gonna do some cooking.
Awesome.
What about you?
Same. Well, not mom and grandma, just cooking, staying local. We got several like invites out there, and we were just like, yeah, this year we just want to chill, kind of relax a little bit this year. Just relax a little bit.
That's it. It's funny. I'm even thinking about like switching up some of the food that we make just to make it a little bit different, because normally we make the same foods. So I'm like, no, let's try something different. Let's make some different things. So anyway. Yeah.
We started throwing prime rib. Like we threw one in last. Like we would always change up our meat, and so like it was like threw a prime rib in there, and I was like, man, prime rib, like homemade. Yeah. And we did a couple of little different things. Like what did she do last year? She did like some Mexican dish. Like, so like we would always have this like crazy creative dish in, on the holiday, but who knows? We may do something different. One year we did all Japanese, like Thanksgiving almost, but we had a couple of the sides, like, just, mix it up.
Listen, your wife's a chef, so at the end of the day, right? All those things are just part of our wheelhouse, right? It's just part of like, oh, let's switch it up. This year, Japanese themed.
Yeah, we're gonna throw it out. Maybe Mediterranean this year. We all like Mediterranean, so we may do a Mediterranean Thanksgiving. You know what? I think that might be official. We're gonna have a Mediterranean. Yeah, we're gonna have a Mediterranean Thanksgiving this year. I'm calling it out now. It is what it is.
There we go. We got to get some new spices in the cabinet. Make some good sides. Make some baba ganoush or something. Who knows?
Listen, it is becoming my little like secret joy of like buying. Did I mention this on the podcast already?
About spices.
Oh my God! Like you said, I have a new Mediterranean season up there now. Like I am like. I'm kind of getting addicted. Like everywhere I go now, if I see something, I'm describing it.
Like, oh, that's a nice seasoning. Let's try that.
I don't even know. I haven't even used like half of it since like the last couple of weeks. But everything I have has been amazing. So it only makes me want to do it more and more. So
I believe it. Cooking is experiencing flavors and new tastes and things like that. It actually is an experience, right? It's a real experience. So I want
to travel the world and just eat food, man. Travel the world, exercise and eat. That's it. That's the goal.
That is the goal, man. It's funny. I've had to shift those goals a bit as I've gone down my health journey a bit more, but it is about experiencing other cultures, tasting the food, right?
Yeah.
Getting it because it connects you with that part of culture, that part of their culture. So absolutely, man. We'll still put it on the bucket list.
It's on there. Oh yeah, it's on there. Oh yeah, like travel the world and eat and exercise. Cause you got to exercise, so you're gonna be eating, right? You can't just sit around.
We're gonna have to do some movement on top of that food. But either way, it's funny that we'd even start the conversation with some vision type things, right? With some future talk, but. Again, we want to kind of talk about some of the stuff we talked about last week. For those of you that listened last week, we had a nice conversation about vision, about some of the things that are imperative for us moving our lives in that direction, in the direction we want it to go. And we're kind of going to, double back or just do like a part 2 or a continued part to this when we dive into talking specifically about visions in your relationship, specifically in your marriage. Right. So again, those of you that know, right, T and I have both been married for some time. You guys are what, 16, 17? years?
14.
14. I'm giving you extra, right? You're 14, yeah. 14 years. Me and my wife, 10 years. So we can have the conversation about staying in a long-term committed relationship and continuing to allow it to flourish and go through the seasons that it needs to go through in order for you to build the life that you want, right? The family unit that you are envisioning. And when we talk about this family unit and we talk about marriage, vision has so much to do with where that relationship goes, where that marriage goes.
Absolutely.
Right? It has so much to do with it. And I think we want to spend some time talking about it because it's interesting to hear the different perspectives that are out there. Right now, you know, if you go on social, you got this whole split singles world, marrieds world, right? Singles talking about how marriage doesn't work and
well, shared marriages and, you know, and then adding in other people and like, hey, like no judgment. I'm just like, that's the reality of like today. Like, and I saying it's right and I saying it's wrong. We have a different, we have a different visions for what marriage is. That's right. As a society.
Right. As a society, and everyone's entitled to their vision and their opinion and their kind of perspective on it. But T and I are going to give you kind of our perspective of how we continue to thrive in our marriage or grow and push our marriages. And again, one of those things is vision, and it's coming down to some of these ideas that we have to adapt with our spouse. That's going to be able to help us get there. So, you know, when we talk vision and marriage, T, kind of what are some of the things that pop up immediately for you when we kind of go down this path?
Well, I mean, when you talk about vision, what happens is, in my opinion, unbeknownst to us, we all have our own individual vision for what we believe marriage is. This is why we get married, right? Like you have a perception of this is what I think, or this is what I expect. And then you date someone, whether for a short period of time or a long period of time, and they start to fall into this vision that you believe that you should have for, you know, said great marriage, right? What happens is you, let's say wife or husband or whatnot, one individual, two individuals, both only have your individual ones. And what happens is during the dating stage, in my opinion, is you start to morph for the other person. You start to like, you know what? I can bend over there a little bit because you're trying to do everything that you can to make sure this square and this square peg and this round hole match up, because you both believe, you know, if we just figure it out, we'll make it, because we're so happy, we're so in love, we have all these things around it. What happens is in the marriage now, once all of the figuring it out comes on, now your individual visions creep up even stronger. And what happens is if they're different, all of that trying to fit it and work it together now on the other side becomes even more difficult, because now all the pleasantries are off. There's no more dating, trying to win them over, I got you, right? Like it is what it is now. And when you start talking about this, it's the first thing that comes to my mind, because this is what happened with us, because my wife had a vision, I had a vision, we had a dating life, and then when we got married, it was like, whoa, this isn't what we talked about. and then she's like, no, this ain't what we talked about. But come to find out, we actually never talked about it.
Exactly.
We actually never talked about it.
So true, and that's funny. That's like a great place to start, because I don't think, you know, I've counseled a few people that are getting started in their courting journey, or even their fiance, right? Like they're engaged.
Yeah.
And one of the things I often talk about is, have you guys talked about the vision of what life looks like? Just what life looks like. We often talk about, do you want to have children? That's about like the basis of like the vision.
That's where it starts, right?
Right. It's like, do you want to have
But it shouldn't be, in my opinion. I'll put a pin at that.
True. I don't think so either. Really, it's just about vision of your life. But go back to the expectation also, something else key that you said. Where do these expectations come from?
Absolutely.
How do we walking into now a relationship where man has a vision or an expectation for what marriage is? Where did he get that vision?
Mm-hmm.
Woman has another expectation for what marriage is. Where did she get that vision? Are they getting it from healthy parents, right? Meaning like,
are they getting it from trauma-filled relationships
right.
that they're like, I'm not going to be like,
right.
But then what happens is you end up being like it, maybe just not the same way.
Right, because you don't know any different, right? And that's
you don't
see. So you might think like, oh, I don't want to be that, but actually everything in your being and your habits and how you learn it, you're going directly in that direction. Right?
Yeah, or you go so hard the opposite way, trying to avoid being that. Now you're like totally like unbalanced. Anything that looks like it is like, like,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right, and you don't actively know how to work through those things. So
yes,
what's funny, if I go all the way back, I'm going through this right now because my daughter, she's 4, she's watching a bunch of Disney stuff, right?
Uh-oh.
I know, and so she's getting this like princess mindset about her. Right. And again, a lot of times people won't think that's a big deal. Oh, it's Disney, it's a child thing. But I really believe a lot of this stuff is foundational. Granted, she gets a chance to see me and my wife, right? She gets to see me and Zara be able to interact and love and do all that stuff around the house. But she's also watching these images and these messages of what it means when a prince courts her, or like, what it means when, some guy likes her type of thing, and what she's supposed to do as a prince and courting and like putting her hand out and that type of stuff. And I'm like, man, this is unreal images of how this thing works. And are we starting her off in a path that maybe doesn't make the most sense? Or do we have to recalibrate her? Or is it just entertainment, right? Sometimes I overthink it, but I think that's important too, of how we start to get images of what we expect marriage or courtship or relationship to be,
Absolutely, man. And look, mine came from my father, like just straight up, like, and he would talk about courting a girl. Like I still say courting, like literally, like I still use that term, courting. My dad talked about taking care. My dad talked about providing. My dad talked about being a protector. My dad talked about, being financially stable, knowing how to do everything in the house so that if you ever need to support, you're able to do so, and you're not dependent either. And my dad was in a wheelchair, so he felt like he had to overdo like things because he had a disability, right? He had to show himself even more. Like Black people would say, we got to sometimes work twice as hard to get the same result, right? Like my dad being disabled was like, I got to work twice as hard. I had to be that much better of a husband in so many areas, because to be able to sustain a wife knowing that I have a disability. And I've only known my dad to be dating someone for a short period of time, or just totally married to my stepmom for years. And before me, it was married to my mom. And so I grew up with this, like, he really enjoyed marriage and singleness of one, like being with one person. And so then literally I've come on here before, and I feel like said it, like most people are like, when they grow up, oh, I want to be a basketball player. Oh, I want to be this. And all these things are cool. But really, the one thing, Chris, I wanted as a kid more than anything was to actually be a husband. That was like my secret, like, like my little secret. And, like the girls like, oh, I want to be a wife one day, a princess, da, 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 da. Like I was the other side. I was the boy, like, man, I can't wait to have a wife. I can't wait to have a family. I can't wait to have, all these different things that it was even more so than having money, even more so than whatever else, because I grew up with, that's what my dad was putting all his attention to. Right. And he did those things around like the family, his son, etc., and make sure everybody's okay. I never saw past that, them actually build vision together, though. I never saw past that because my mom, left out and was cheating on my dad and everything else. These are the other things that I'm seeing on the other side. So now I'm growing up like, I want this, but I got it, can't look like this, better not look like this.
Right.
And my wife comes up in her own way, and I'll let her tell her story about that. And she has her own, and so many things match. But then there's also so many things that didn't tighten up, that we didn't learn. And now you're in a marriage trying to learn what you should have learned when the pressure is on, and then you add kids in. And now you're trying to give them something.
Yeah. then it's the real pressure, right? And this is what breaks up marriages, and that's why I think having this conversation and tying this all into vision and and really giving some tools of how this works, I think it'll help some people. Because just like you said, you come in with a vision and an expectation, your wife comes in with a vision and an expectation. Your wife, you come in with experiences and right, kind of what your dad taught you and what you saw in the household, and your wife comes in with what her parents taught her and what she saw in the household. And then all of a sudden you try to build a life together without explaining all those things, because most times we're young and we don't really understand how all those things actually did impact where we're going and what we're seeing and what our expectation is. But most importantly is, once you then do come together, you've got to have something that does keep you together. It keeps the family vision together. It keeps both of you headed in a similar direction.
Yes.
And that comes after the courting and all those things. But I believe, probably like you, T, is that you got to have these conversations early.
I think you got to, once you decide, hey, I want to marry this person, like them conversations should start happening, right? Those shared visions, preparing. The one thing I will say, I'm glad you said this, Chris, like this is perfect. The one reason, like I made the decision that yes, I would get married was because I said, is this somebody that I can struggle with and get better? Like, is this somebody that I knew, like I was, like in my experience, I had enough wisdom given to me that said, whoever you get with cannot be the person of the moment. Because if they're maxed out in your moment and you can't see yourself building with them and growing, then that's not someone. And that was literally the trigger that said, all right, I'm gonna go get the ring. Like, it was all these good things, but then I had to question. I was like, is she the woman of the moment? And this is like ladies, guys really go through this, right? We should, but a lot of us do. Is she a woman of the moment? And if she stays the woman of the moment, you're not getting the ring. It's not moving past that. Like, I just keep it I'm gonna keep it real 100 right now. And if you were like, hey, let's keep going, because he still see you as the woman of the moment, or he might be just really, really, really responsible and knows he has some things, but statistically it shows that's not the truth. That's not the truth. That's not it. Right. And then once we got past that, you got to start having that, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is my expectations. This is what, and then hopefully you guys are open and transparent and candid. And now you get past that, say whatever you need to say to keep the person around, right? Oh, like, no, yeah, I give you the, that sounds good, right? I didn't agree. I just said it sounded good, right? Now you can have a real legitimate conversation around, what does our life look like with no kids? What does our life look like with children? What does our life look like financially? What does our credit look like? Where do you want to live? Like, come on. Like, I'm thankful my wife was okay with traveling the world. Like, we already talked about this whole traveling. We didn't move like 6 times, 7 times in like 10, 12 years. So imagine if I had gotten with somebody who was like, oh no, we set our roots down and we're not moving and we're not going anywhere. We would have been divorced probably, because I'd have been like, no, my work business got to take me over here. Or you would have succumbed. I would have, and you would have stayed at one job in that one. And city, I would have hated my life. Hated your life, and then you would have gone out, right? Like, and people don't understand. This is what happens when people. And we never talked about ours either. We just got lucky. Yeah, and it's. I mean, to be honest, right? Like, we get to a place where. If these things aren't talked about, it will cause you to not live the life that you want. And when you're not fulfilled and you're not happy and you're not, that's when you go off and you have a midlife crisis and you go off and, right, you wreck your marriage, or you do, right, you do some things out of the flesh, or just, right, just because your brain's not in the place, because you're seeking something that you haven't been able to get. And that's why, again, back to this shared vision, I really believe that just communicating about where you're going, right? For me and my wife, one of the biggest things that we actually didn't necessarily agree on was the lifestyle, the ultimate lifestyle. My wife actually wanted to retire and live on an island, like be away from people. And then we got into a business where we're in front of, you got to be all around people, right, all day, every day. We're around people, right? And so that was actually a struggle, because up front, I kind of knew that. I kind of knew that she wanted to live on an island. I just didn't think that was realistic.
You know what I mean?
You just saying that.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, that's not what you mean. But then as we get into our relationship and we're growing, she's like, no, like really, like I'm okay just like leaving the country and like going to live somewhere and being kind of excluded from things. And I was like, well, that's not what I was thinking about. I thought we would have like lots of things and people and relationships and da-da-da. And so that became something that we had to talk through and really find out what I did and she did for me. Like, you know, well, why do you want that? I know that's something that you said you wanted, but why do you really want that? Like, what is it that you were really going after? And why do I want it on my side? Then we come to a place where we start thinking, well, how can we have both? Right? How can we do a little bit of both? How can you get that with the peace and tranquility and solitude? Because that's really what she was looking for, right? Is the peace. And
she didn't see that around a bunch of people.
That's right. She just didn't see that you could get peace by being around people or having good relationships. She just knew I got to detach myself from people because it's too stressful, it's too crazy. But really, she's after peace and right, just wholeness and time and those things to be with. And so I was like, well, that's the things I want too. I didn't see it being secluded on an island. I just saw it that like we could create this peace and create the haven. And so that's when, after having the conversations, our visions got clearer. So then we understood what we were fighting towards and what we were headed towards.
You both wanted the same thing. You thought you can get it differently.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we had to talk about those things so we can get to an understanding. Same thing with having children. Same thing with being in business. Because like you said, T, you know, your wife would not have stuck around if she was like, I just want to be planted in one place, and you're out there bouncing to different cities and going to different, like she wouldn't have had it. It's the same thing I see a lot of times when people want to become entrepreneurs, when they want to branch out and they want to say, you know what, this job isn't fulfilling me anymore. I want to go do this. I want to take some risks, some calculated risks. I want to go on this side because it would fulfill me. If your spouse is not there, thinking like they're always going to hold you back from that because they're probably the opposite. They're probably in the comfort, like
I need more security. Like security it just certainty, right? Like it's one of the 6 human needs, right? Like some people value uncertainty more than they do certainty, even though everybody needs a bit of both. But if you got somebody in a marriage who ridiculously values certainty, and then somebody who's like, I like to live on the edge of adventure, I need uncertainty, gives me comfort.
You're gonna have a conflict. You're
gonna have a clash. But vision talks about how to mesh uncertainty with certainty together. Right. And what we're saying is do it before you get in marriage. But if you're in marriage and you're 10 years in and you're figuring it out, you still can do it. If you're going to have to just deal with a lot of the trauma that you created to get to that point, which therapy can help, right? Therapy can help, and some really deep conversations, but you can get on the same page because when 2 people come together and agree, man, like they're unstoppable.
Right. That's right.
They're unstoppable.
And that becomes what the goal is for couples that are listening to us right now, for you guys to get into some form and agreement of what's up ahead. Of not what happened in the past, of not where you are currently, but what's up ahead and the ideal life that you both would like, and being honest with each other about what that life is. And then how you go about actually achieving that, because that's what gives you a shared vision, right? If I talk about the entrepreneurship side of things, one of the things that my wife wanted a bunch, I remember this like it was yesterday, she would always be like, no, when we travel, when we do have a child or when we have children, I want them to experience life. Like I want them to go, I want us to spend 3 months in Bali. I want us to spend 4 months in the rainforest. You know what I mean? Like she was like, I want them to experience. I don't want to just take a vacation for 2 weeks and then come back. I want to like go and be able to go. And once that was her vision of one of the things that she wanted, I was like, well, we got to have a business. We're not going to have a job living that life. And you can't have a business where you got to be Nita in front of everybody all the time. All the time. So I was like, well, if that's the vision of what you want, I like that vision. I follow that. Okay. Well, now here's what we have to do. So then when times get hard in business, we just point back to the vision of like, hey, is this what we still want? Because we're still on path, but that's why we're going through what we're going through now, is because you say you want that life. And most people don't live that life. Just so we're all clear, right? Most people don't get a chance to just bounce around the way they want. So then that's what allows us to sacrifice and not think, oh, our marriage is suffering, or this is suffering, or we don't have time to go to this thing, or these people go to this, right? Because we do all that comparison stuff. It's like, but that's not our vision. Our vision is to spend 4 months in the rainforest or whatever, right? So if that's the vision, we got to put in the work now in this path to get there. And that's what makes the day-to-day, the month-to-month a little bit more palatable. And because you can see clearly about where you're headed. Yeah,
look, most of our parents taught us how to survive the day. That's what they taught us, how to survive, how to survive in the moment. Some of our parents and grandparents and people, aunties and uncles that raised us went through so much trauma, they only came out knowing just how to survive. And they passed those survival lessons on to us. And that's why a lot of times when you're in marriage and you're in just survival mode, getting through the next day, you're not even thinking about down the future and anything else because you're trying to survive the day. What happens is your spirit is still yearning for that, your individual deal, right? Your spirit is still yearning for it, even though you're living in survival mode today. And it hurts when your spirit is yearning for it. And then when you look across at your partner and they don't have the same yearning that you do, and y'all both in your own version of survival mode every day, this is when marriages get stale. This is when marriages criticism starts. Well, you said you was gonna be providing better, or you said you was gonna be taking care of these kids at home and doing their homework, right? This is when you start having the signs of, like, we were talking offline, Dr. Gottman has like the 4 signs that a marriage is failing. And like, I'm like, yeah, these are pretty good signs, which is criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And I had to look stonewalling up. I was like, what's stonewall? I heard it before. It's like when you just totally disengage, like you just totally just disengage, like, yep, and you just go off into your own private island, right? So it goes in her private island while Chris is talking, and he's talking, and she's sipping a margarita on her private beach, and then he says something, she comes back like, yep, whatever you say, and she really doesn't care, right?
That's like, a real thing that happens. That
oh my God.
It's like emotionally checking out.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Emotionally checking out. And
you emotionally check out of a marriage. Oh, look, criticism, emotionally checking out, being defensive when you check in, you'll check in just to defend yourself and defend the situation. And then contempt, where you just make sure you say and do things that just pisses them off. You are on, you're in a situation. Right. And I've been in a situation.
I have, right? Like, again, and
no marriage that got 14 years ain't been in a situation.
That's right. That's right. And this is a good place to kind of dive in even a bit more, because understanding those 4 things, how they show up in your marriage, how they show up, and then how you go through seasons of getting through them.
Yeah.
Because it's real. Like, your marriage, and shout out to everyone that has been 10 years plus and has had an amazing marriage all 10 years, all 12
and nothing
years.
ever,
right, and
there's no defensiveness, criticism, contempt, and stonewalling. If you're amazing, there, you should write a book.
It's right. You really should. And like, I don't wish bad things upon anyone, but I would say that if you're in that place, you have to really question, if you've been with someone for a really long time and there hasn't been conflict in that degree, you might want to check about how much you're open with each other and how much you're actually communicating what you really feel and think. Because it's really, really difficult to go for 10 years plus and not have a season or where there's conflict, where visions are off, where there is disagreement, where there is some content, where there is some of that. It'd be really tough. But if that is you out there, hey, hit us up. T and I probably want to have you on the show.
Look. Jesus lived 33 years and had ministry for 3. And he had a lot of conflict, and he didn't even do nothing wrong to nobody. So I'm just trying to figure out how this works.
I'm trying to figure it out. So if that's you, hit us up, because we want to know what the secret is. We want to figure it out. And but for those of us that have had seasons where these things are present,
you might be in that season right now. Like, we understand.
That's right. We understand more than you probably know, right? But we definitely understand. The question is, can you get back to a vision? Can you get back to a vision of like, what are we doing here? What are we trying to do here? Right? What is it that we're really, and I know sometimes it can get clouded with the amount of stuff that comes up, But if you really stop and spend some time with your spouse and you just talk about like, what are we trying to get out of this? Do we have a vision for our family life? What type of children do we want to raise? I see them being raised right now, but what type of children do we want them?
What direction are we pointing them?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and I think it's so important. Me and my wife think it's so important. We schedule it. Like we schedule like Wednesdays or whatever. Like it was Wednesday for a long time. Like Wednesdays is like the day, like all bets are off during this time. Like all bets are off. If I can do all bets are off for work, I can do all bets are off for kids on certain things. If I can do all bets are off for my own personal thing, and I can't do all bets are off for this person that I said I went under God and I'm gonna spend the whole rest of my life. We gotta recheck everything else out. That's right. Like I always tell my wife, like, I didn't marry you for the kids. like I didn't marry you for the kids. So I married, like, you were before them and you're gonna be after them. So they can chill for a moment and they can give us ours, because they gonna go. They leave it. Like, and I got all boys, so they going out chasing their own thing. Right. You know, like what the Bible says, when a man finds a wife, I mean, he's searching, he's gone. Right. Right. These boys, like, so we can't have 18 years or 20 plus years, right? Because they spread out of no time where everything is zoned in only to them, when we were before them and we gonna be after them. So, and that's what happens with marriages. Before kids, they're all together. Then when they get kids, they totally lose each other, totally stop, put everything only on the kids, and then come back out the other side and assume it's going to be like it was before. You're two totally different people. You went two totally different directions. And you know how many marriages are now 20 years up? Are we giving it up now? Once the kids leave. Why? Because you just totally lost yourself for 20 plus years because of children. You have to schedule the time. And I, you know, me and wife used to go back and forth about this. She's like, the kids is most important, da, 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 da. Like, and naturally, okay. And I'm like, no, it's us. We are one. They are not one with us. And she hated when I said that. Like, I said, who do we get? I said, who do we go and get married? Like, what do we do? When we went and got married, what happened? We went before God and all the witnesses, right? And we said, we're getting married, and we became one. And I said, guess what? Them. Right. They're two. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. That's them. We are one. Like, not them. We're one. And that was a hard, like, talk about shared vision. I'm giving a real challenge here. Like, and I'm saying this because me and my wife talked about this openly with people. Like, this was a real hard, like, I'm like, it's us and our children. And we are one family, because we are going to still be together afterwards. But if they come in, they're going to leave, and then now we're two separate people. Now we got to almost like redate again to get back together after they gone, and we may not like each other at that point.
It may not be worth it to you at that point to continue to work on it, right?
Yeah,
that's what starts to happen.
This is real, like, it's real.
Yeah, it's what starts to happen. That's why these conversations are incredibly important. Yes. Whatever you focus on, you're going to get more of. If you focus the right energy in your marriage, you're going to get better, healthier marriage. Yes. A lot of times, if we're just focusing on the children or focusing on the kids, right, then they might turn out pretty good, but now you don't have a marriage. You don't have a marriage. You didn't put no attention. You didn't put any attention into it. And then in those 18 years, 22 years, whatever, 25 years that you're raising children, and before they leave the house, you've also picked up new hobbies, new habits. You've consumed new things over the past 20 years, right? You have your friends and they have their friends. You got guys' night and you have girls' night for 20 years. You got to understand, like, that becomes how people go completely different directions. That's why, back to the point, it's why a shared vision, and at least reviewing that vision every twice a year, weekly touch base. You have to do it. Oh my, Chris, it's so funny. Like, so real quick, you just reminded me of something. So, we are in a different financial place now, right? With a lot more financial opportunity, right? I guess that's the best way to say it. And so I was like, okay, well, if this happens,
now it's like, now we're like revisiting, because that wasn't necessarily on it was on the game plan, but now we're like, look, it's like reality, right? And then I was like, well, if this sells and we get this money, I was like, oh, I was like, we're gonna pay that. I know we would do this because these are things we talk about. Then I was like, where would we live? And I couldn't figure out and I was like, holy crap, we haven't talked about it. We haven't talked about that part of it in a while.
Yeah.
Of like, all right, when this hits and we can make this move, which can come up, like, where would we live? And because before, living was dictated by the business.
Yeah.
And now it's like, no, now you have freedom to choose where you want to live. And I went back to her, I said, I was searching a memory bank. We haven't really decided on this yet. We have an idea. I said, I think I know what you say. And then come to find out, we were in two totally different spots with it. Two totally different spots. And I was like, I am so glad we do these check-ins, because I did not think she was thinking about way over there.
Right.
I ain't gonna put it out there, we keep it way over there.
Right.
And I was like thinking way over here.
Yeah.
And now what if that money would have hit? And I would have been like, are we doing this? She's like, no. We would have been like, uh-oh.
Now more conversations needed. Now more conversation. That's why this vision, this shared vision that you have, it really will save your marriage. It'll save your relationship, because it gives you a basis to just understand, like, all right, this is what we're fighting towards. And again, pulling in both sides. I know we had talked about this a bit offline. We might have talked about it last week. Like, what happens if your spouse doesn't have a vision?
Oh, that's a whole episode.
It's a whole nother episode, right?
It's a whole other episode, man. So many of my friends, man. Oh,
because it's real. It's what happens. Spouse all of a sudden is in their own world, not thinking about where you're going, just kind of thinking about now, thinking about the past, distracted, whatever it is. That's a real place. Again, these are the seasons of marriage, ladies and gentlemen. We're having a marriage episode, right?
Yes.
So these are the seasons of marriage to understand. It's not going to be perfect all the time. Both of you aren't going to be pushing towards your vision at the same pace over and over again. There's some years that's somebody's going to have to pick up the slack. Somebody's not, right, doesn't have the vision,
or somebody don't have the energy, like to run at the speed at which maybe the vision requires at that time. And what are you going to do?
But one of the things that has helped me in my marriage, it's helped because we went through counseling before, and just hearing this message over and over again. And this will help somebody that's out there that's in a relationship right now, whether it's in a good place, not a good place, whatever the case is. Remember, you're on the same team.
Absolutely.
You always remember that. It's not ever about you versus me. Just like T said, once we go under God and we say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to become one, we're on the same team. We're on the same team. It is not a you versus me problem anymore.
Right.
It's us versus it. Whatever the it is, whatever the energy is, whatever the spirit is that comes in our house, whatever the action is, or whatever it is that we're fighting against, if we don't turn it on each other, if we just kind of, how they say, like when you are fighting someone, like you fight back to back, right? So she's on my back, and you got this way, and you got
I got this way, you got that back. Yeah,
it doesn't matter that's how we're gonna fight this thing. Once you really understand that in your relationship, once you really, really understand, it's not you, me, it's us together versus that thing, whatever we're fighting. It changes your perspective on then what you do on a day-to-day. Because a lot of times the enemy comes to talk about how this is against, it's your spouse, it's your wife's problem. If she was this way, if she did this, and you get these thoughts, and she starts thinking, if he did this, if he was a better this, and that's really not the game. That's how we divide. It's actually about saying, okay, how do we understand each other? How do we learn each other? How do we get to a place where we understand what moves or motivates or guides each person, what they're headed towards, and then we fight together.
Listen, look, I'm gonna bring this topic up, but then we're gonna have another episode on it. When you start complaining about your spouse criticizing more to your friends and family than your actual person who can change, and they are not equipped to handle that conversation, with the right skills and ability, you're gonna have a problem.
Right.
That's like that. That's my hot take for the day.
You're
gonna have a problem.
You're gonna get bad information. You're gonna get.
Well, you gonna have a problem. I'm sorry, you gonna have a problem, Chris.
Yeah.
Like, and you have a problem. If I'm married, and there's some things people that are not married, perspectives that they can give, because it's it's humans, right? We deal with humans. However, and there still they can only give perspective, and that's it. It's just perspective. Because I always say, I can go to Chris and I can be like, man, who's married? And say, hey, I got this going on. And Chris, and we've done this before with, like I'm going, hey, Chris, I was thinking about this. What's your thoughts, right? And he gives me great advice. Here goes the thing. His advice can only go so far because he's married to Z, not E. Right? So this is why your conversation has to mainly be with the person you guys are dealing with. It can't be most of all what you say is to other people, because they can only give that much advice. And even if those other people, you got a weird situation where they used to date them or used to be married to them, and you just happen to be friends with them. And like, this man? Yeah, I know him too. Guess what? That was the old him or the old her. You still ain't dating the current person. So most of your conversation, because I think what happens is a lot of times people are afraid to have real conversations with the individual. And so they go run tell that to everybody else most of the time. And everybody else is your friend and family, and they want what's best for you. So they're just going to naturally just make you feel like you're right. Right?
That's why
even sometimes they'll tell you the other side of it, but at the end of the day, you're going to get more you're right a lot of times, because people don't want to make you feel like you don't have a place to go.
Yeah. Unless you have and this is why I advocate for having people in your corner that will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find them, and it's hard to have real friendships and real relationships like that. But that's what I think is needed more than anything. You need someone to call you out when you're tripping, when like it's your BS. Like you need a friend to be like, nah, man, that's you. Like that's not her, that's you. Right. And we need to focus on I think that is, and this is where having wise counsel, seeking wise counsel, getting around people that have taking advice from people that are already doing or further along than in the place that you are. Getting your marriage advice from someone that's already married 20 years is going to be different than you taking marriage advice from someone
a healthy 20 years. Like you gotta do it right.
and even then, right?
Okay.
Just getting to 20 years, there might be some things that, again, we still have to take in, and it might not be truth, but it's going to be like, well, I see how they did that then.
Oh, I see. I can understand. Yeah. I got you.
Because at the end of the day, they've been doing it for 20 years, and we know people that didn't make 5. So there's going to be a difference there, whether we agree fully that it's a healthy one, right? We can figure that out. But just the fact that they've been doing it longer than us means that they have some wisdom there, that they didn't call it quits, because most people will call it quits very quickly these days. And so surrounding yourself with people that also give good, sound, wise counsel. When people come to me and talk to me about their relationships, my foundation is I want them to stay in marriage. Like that's where I start. I try to don't find ways to give the out unless it's abuse, and right, like that's a whole
There's some unique situations where we can
where
have the
you're
conversation.
Where you're just like, all right, that's probably not going to be good for you to stay with, right? You got to separate. But in general, I believe in the sanctity of marriage, of a relationship, of what we're doing and what we're building. So I'm going to find ways to say, here's how you fix it. Here's maybe it is you got to take a step back for a little bit of time, but you're not leaving, you're not doing it. You just got to understand that this is separate, right? And she has to heal herself. You have to heal yourself. There's all these ways, but seeking wise counsel and having people that can speak into your life and give you wisdom on these things, it's important to your relationship. It's important to get into that place.
and like you said, man, and look, these two thoughts go together, right? Like my thought is have counsel, but don't only just go to counsel to try to sort it out. Chris is like, make sure you get counsel and you don't always have to rush back in. Like these two things can both be true. And it's a balance. There's no black or white with this. I would argue there's no gray. This is kind of like just whatever. This is a new color, right? It's ebbs and flows. But if you keep checking in and you guys stay on a good page and you have good counsel around you. And again, I'm not saying that a married person can't talk to a single person, because at the end of the day, people are people, right? Like I talked to, LD, right? LD's not married, right? He was on our podcast before, but there's times where I go to LD and I'm like, hey man, I was just thinking about this. Can you give me, I need some perspective, because I think I might be processing this wrong. And he's like, and I'm like, damn, I didn't even think about it like that, right? Because he does have his own experience. His mom and dad were married for 30 plus years, right? Like, so I'm like, so there's value, right? In who you talk to and what's their motivation too, right? Because sometimes our friends and family could secretly have not really wanted y'all to be together. And then now they're using this as leverage to and plant the little seeds. And I'm not saying, man, you have a situation, but I've heard about this situation out there, right? And so having a shared vision eliminates, even when you're trying to go have something good happen and maybe somebody is out there or whatever, I'll have you, at least has you have a foundation that you can come back to and say, hey, we're chasing this. Or we're going, or not even, I hate to use the word chasing this because it's almost like it's elusive, like it's trying to run from us. No, we're creating this. Right. We get the privilege of creating this life that we want for each other. And sometimes it could be, is this still what we want? Mm-hmm. And then how do we need to change our technique? Like, Chris, you're in business. I want to have create this type of like business. And then guess what? You're like, you know what? Face-to-face doesn't make sense. So let's just go online, right? Because I can't have a face-to-face business where I always got to be present if I'm going to live in Amazon. So you have to recreate or continue to create a business now that's mobile. All you need is a hotspot and a good internet sync up, and you understand the time differences based on who you're talking to and where, right? It's the same thing in marriage. What do you want? What do you want? And it's okay if you can't answer that question quickly. It's okay, if you can't answer that. That's what time, you got time to answer this question. You can answer maybe a little bit of it at a time. If you only can get out to a year, great. You got a shared vision for a year. Right. And then in year 2, check in. Maybe you can get to 5 or whatever else. Or maybe you are a year by year couple, because that's how you guys both process. Having a shared vision will let you know what you are. Like, I can't get too far out with my wife. Like, I can't. Like, if I start being like 20 years, she's like, oh, like, she's like, but I know, because we have these conversations where everything got to be in like these 5-block time frames, 3 to 5 block time frames, right? Now for me, in my mind, I may have my notes, my private notes of deeper things like that are later on. But it's okay, because that's how I contribute, right? Like she just said that, she's like, you're always forward thinking. And I need that because I'm so in the moment. Right. And now you can play off of these differences to work together.
That's it. Often your spouse needs that other side.
Yes.
It might be right now, let me just plan this out. But you are the 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, this is what it looks like. And you actually need both of them. Because spouses do the opposite. Like, I'm the same way. I'm very forward. Zara is very like, right now, let's figure this thing out. What is this?
And there's things I miss, like in the moment, because I'm
right. That's right. And so they pull us back. She pulls me back. It's like, well, how far is that? We got to do blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, got it. That thing. Right. But sometimes she's stuck in this, and I'm like, remember Amazon, remember, right? The house that we want, right? You know what I mean? Like, I have to pull her all the way out. Like, no, don't worry about it. We're still on path. Like, we're still trading, and we're getting there. And so that's the balance that's needed. But that's what comes with you just talking about it. If there's anything that we can leave you guys with and talk about for this episode specifically, is you got to communicate with your spouse. You got to talk about these things. And one of the biggest things to talk about is a vision of where you're going, of what life looks like up ahead, because it eliminates all of the distractions and the petty arguments and the little things that come up, because you're different people. Let's not get away from this. You're 2 completely different human beings with different upbringings, with different visions, with different environments and programming and traumas and all types of things. And you're trying to come together. The only way you can come together long term, my opinion, but I really believe this is the truth, right? The only way you can come together long term to do something is if you have a shared vision. If something's in the middle, right? For us, you know, God's in the middle of our marriage. So that is a foundational thing that we can always come back to. And then if not, then it's a shared vision of just what life looks like up ahead. And if those things change, being okay to talking about like, I used to want that, but now I want this. You know, I used to see this, but now I want this. And it's okay to have that. But if you're not communicating about it, that's how you go your separate directions. That's how one of you starts saying, this is the things that I like. And then you go this way because you don't communicate with the other person. And they're like, well, I thought we were going this way. Right. And then all of a sudden, like you said, you pick your head up 20 years later after the kids are out of the house and you realize you aren't headed in the same direction. You have new hobbies. You have new things you like. You have new friends. You have new influences. You've been watching something for the past 10 years. They've been watching something different for the past 10 years. They have a different music, right? All of it's different. And then you wonder why you can't come back together and make things happen. So have these conversations early and often.
Yes.
If you care about your relationship, if you want your marriage to get better, you know?
Yeah. And if you want to also avoid, check the criticism, check the defensiveness, check the contempt, and check the stonewalling. These are 4 scientifically proven things, I guess attributes or whatever, that will tear a marriage apart, right? And we believe if you have a shared vision and you're often checking in, it will allow you to sort through some of this stuff. Now, even when you do have these moments, you can still get very, have a lot of criticism, defensiveness when you guys are not on the same page. And we understand that, and it's going to happen. Keep it low. Because when me and my wife talked about this, now I was like, man, at our lowest point, we were all 4 of those.
Of course.
We were all 4 of those. I know. I was like, I don't know about you, but I know I was. I know there were times that I would check out. Like I was like, okay, cool. Right. When most should just check out. I most definitely had times where I knew I was like, oh, I'm gonna piss you off when I say this. Right. And I knew you say something to me, I'll be defensive. And I knew I always had a lot of criticism for things that I felt like you were or were not doing. And I remember, and I'm like, man, that was a really, really, really poor time. And I'm like, but at the same time, it's because you were not meeting my expectations. Code word, we don't have the same vision right now.
Right.
And it's what happens.
And I'll take it even one step further. The thing that I said about always remembering that you're on the same team. If you always remember that you're on the same team, actually what that does for those things that you listed, they're very much so you looking at the other person.
Yep.
And the key is in a relationship is you to look at you and what you're not giving and what you're not doing. If you only think about what you are responsible for, which is yourself, come together and have a healthier relationship. But that's also where a lot of those things come. If you name those, right, the defensiveness, normally it's because you think it's something about them. You're pointing the finger, you're looking at them, and what's the scripture? Camel in the needle of an eye, or before you judge someone, right? Take the needle out, or the
out of your own eye,
out of your own eye type of thing, right? And that's very much so what we do is we're looking at their wrongs and their things. It's like, oh, she pissed me off when she does that. Can't believe she's doing that. This is it, and we're pointing, and we're got a plank in our own eye, and there's a ton of things that we're not doing ourselves. That is the reason why we're looking at them. So always turn that back on you, because remember, you're on the same team. You're on the same team. So it's not about the other person. You can really just go back and look at you. One of the books that I always go back to in our relationship and I give to everyone is The 5 Love Languages, right? If people haven't read that book by Gary Chapman, 5 Love Languages, just a great book for people to get down to understanding how to love your spouse or how to love someone. The premise of the book, for those of you that haven't read it, basically 5 ways that we communicate our love. One of them being acts of service. Another one of them being gifts that we give, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. So those are the ways that we show love and receive love. what often happens is our spouse has a different love language than us.
Mm-hmm.
So in our household, my love language is quality time. My wife's love language is physical touch, right? Sometimes when we get into a place of having down seasons in our marriage, we have to think about not why am I not receiving love from him, or why am I not getting love, but what am I not giving her, right?
Yeah.
If I know that that's her love language, what it says in the book is we can look at our love tanks, kind of like a gas tank. So if our love tanks are empty, meaning it hasn't been filled with the love that's needed, it's only right that that person doesn't give love because they're empty.
Yeah.
But some person has to step up at some point in the relationship and say, even though my love tank is empty, I'm going to consciously choose to fill your love tank. That means I'm going to go out of my way and I'm going to consciously give you your love language, even if it's not my love language. And even if I'm pulling out of emptiness to give to you, somebody has to step up and do that. And when that happens and you change it being about them and make it about what you're not giving, if you start working on giving it, guaranteed that person comes back around. Might be in a month, might be in 3 months, might be in 6 months. But if you don't give up and you just keep filling that tank, they have nothing that they can do but start to fill yours. If you go above and beyond to treat them in the way they want to be treated, in the way they need to be loved, they're going to give it back to you. But too often we get into the blaming, the you versus me, and it's not that. Once you understand it's just us versus it, that pride goes down, that ego goes down. You really start to say, okay, I'll do this for you because I know that's what you need. And then you can get to some other areas. So that's my 2 cents on anyone that might be looking at it or figuring this thing out. Read that book, The 5 Love Languages. Understand if you're not receiving love, probably your spouse doesn't know your love language, or one of you has to step up and say, regardless, I'm going to give you the love that you need in order to fill your tank up. So then I know that one day I'll get it back, regardless of kind of what's happening right now.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to do another one on I'm filling your cup up and you never seem to fill mine back up or or care to. Mm-hmm. And we'll have a whole nother episode on that one.
We definitely will. And I'll tell you, because to be quick about it, it goes back to shared vision. Because if you know you're playing for a 10-year, 20-year game, if you're playing for a 40-year, 50-year game, what's a year? I used to tell this to people a lot of times that go through their marriage and that they have rough seasons. I'm like, you said for better or for worse, sickness and health, right? Until death do you part. So you're planning on doing this thing for 60 years, 70 years, right? That's what we got going. That's the baseline. Great. So what's 3 years of a rough marriage if you plan on doing it for 70? Even if it's 3 consecutive years of a rough marriage, what is it if you're really playing a long game? If you're really saying, that's perspective, that's context. Now, nobody wants to go through 3 years of roughness, right? No one wants to. It's not comfortable. But if you put it in perspective, is it really that bad? If you had 67 years of greatness and 3 years of not greatness?
Our society doesn't permit us to be able to think in a way that it's going to be rough for a certain amount of time, because when things are rough, we just quit, we move on, we leave one app to go to another, we leave one dating site and one person to go to another, we change our social media friends, we create a new account, we do different things. Everything in our society says when we don't like it, we just end it, dead it, and move on and start something new. Everything in our society says that, even a business. What they tell you, if it's going really rough, man, just be done with it. Be done and start a new one, right? Start a new one. It's easier to just like totally chef that one aside and start new rather than like building that one and rebranding, right? Like it's so many things. And sometimes that strategically makes sense. But in marriage,
it's not what you signed up for.
We'll save that for next time. I'll save my thought. Well,
hopefully,
this is good.
We'll
go into it next time.
We will definitely get into it because we got a ton that we want to get you. And again, this is about perspective, ladies and gentlemen. We
got 14 plus years of content for this topic.
That's right. We could stay here.
I wrote a book about this topic early on in my marriage. So funny. So
we can stay there, but hopefully this is helping those of you that are listening, that are in a relationship, that are feeling like maybe you want to call it quits or whatever you're feeling or whatever season you're going through. Just know that there's tools to get through it. Start with a vision, understand that you focus on you and what you're doing in your relationship to be able to help. And trust me, you'll get through it. It's seasons to it. So that's all we got. We'll finish this up. We might give it a part 3, or we'll figure out.
We got some more here, because I know somebody's like, okay, that sounds good. Yeah. But they ain't acting right.
Exactly. So we got to start helping you guys and giving you some tools, because we believe in this marriage thing and what we're building as far as family units, because that's really what this is about. It's family units and building something strong for our families. Better together than divided. So anyway,
it's cheaper to keep her. My daddy used to say it's cheaper to keep her. No, I'm joking.
It actually is. The other saying to that one is love is grand, divorce is $100,000.
Well, yeah,
right?
It is pretty much.
It's cheaper to keep her for sure. So guys, we're gonna sign off. This is another good one for the Perspective Podcast. Again,
very good one.
Hit us up, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Send us messages. We want to hear your perspective. We're going to start going into having some newer people and maybe some other guests on. So we want your engagement and your participation if these are resonating with you. So until next week, guys, we're going to sign off. Take care.
Peace. Love you.